I was recently interviewed by Lucas Atonis, who is a podcaster in Amsterdam, and he has a podcast which you should check out. He is on YouTube at Don Agucho, and I will link him in the show notes. So he reached out to me and interviewed me about my experience in Tango and what I'm doing with my podcast. So it was a really interesting conversation that ultimately led to us talking about this issue of female leaders in Tango and some of my personal reasons for why I lead and what I think about women leading more and more in the community. And one of the points that I made during our conversation was that even though I'm a big proponent of leading for women, I teach women leading, and I've been leading myself for many years. I think it's such an important aspect of the dance for women, for myself and for a lot of women. But at the end of the day, when most women are presented with the choice of dancing with a really experienced female lead or dancing with a really experienced male lead, most women would choose men, myself included. That is a paradox that, it's there, that there's this preference that ultimately we have. And that if there was no gender imbalance in Tango, if we had enough leaders, perhaps I might not be leading right now. And that's the case for many women. Shortly after our conversation, I ended up seeing a post exactly on this topic by someone who is a woman in Tango, and she shared this point of view that she felt somewhat conflicted with so many women now beginning to lead. And because as a woman leader, I talk a lot about how you have to be a little bit more assertive, because a lot of times other women can't tell that you're trying to capaceo them. So she was pointing out that she doesn't like that because it feels too aggressive to her. And now she's kind of stuck in this place where she doesn't know how to say no to some of these women, and she feels pressure to dance with them. But ultimately her preference is to dance with men, and she feels kind of guilty about that. I think the fact that this post even exists is kind of good news, because it tells me that there is enough of a concentration of female leaders that it's becoming an issue. And anytime that we start, experiencing that kind of conflict, it's an opportunity for us to grow, to understand more clearly how to develop these different social skills that we have to adapt to, really. We have to develop them and adapt to them at the same time. Now, when it comes to that challenge of saying no to a dance, this is something that we have to deal with regardless, whether we only like dancing with men or men and women. We always have to practice the skill of saying no tactfully, respectfully, cleverly, to dances that we don't want. So the fact that some women now feel this challenge of saying no to other women is an important obstacle in a way. It's an important challenge, because that is the requirement. And I know how that feels, because when I first started leading more, like I really was more leading at festivals and people saw me leading, I started having a lot of women come up to me and ask me to dance with them and ask me to lead them. And it made me really uncomfortable because not only were they not following the Capaceo rule, they were just sort of kind of expecting to dance with me just because I'm a woman and I would have this camaraderie with them. And it was a real challenge for me to develop the ability to kind of create almost like a force field around me. Like it takes time, but you have to intend it. You have to compose yourself. You have to be very clear with your body language. And all of that is a skill set that we need to have developed for any situation. And now that women are more prominent and perhaps women are becoming more assertive, there is going to be that demand for tactfully saying no when you don't want to. It doesn't mean that the women who are assertive need to necessarily change, right? Like, we're not saying that something external outside of us has to change in order for us to be okay, because that always is a losing path, because you can't control what the other person is going to do or how they're going to do it. You can only control what you can do. So if you're feeling this tension about not wanting to dance with someone, it's important to learn to say no to that for yourself, right? To find a path to that. And there's some really tricky situations. Like just the other day, I was at a milonga, and this friend of mine describes the situation that she danced with a certain leader, and it was fun. The first time she danced with him was really fun. And at the end of the tanda, she complimented him and she said, you know, anytime you want to dance with me, ask me to dance. So he started doing that a lot. And then after like a couple of tandas, it started not to feel as good. Like she stopped liking dancing with him. And so then she was in this conundrum where she told him it's okay, but now she's kind of stuck. And she was trying to figure out what the best way is to like tell him. And it was to the point where there was something physically painful going on in the embrace. So it wasn't just that she didn't like his style. It was like there was something uncomfortable, and she was struggling to find words to express that. And I'm just using that as an example. Like, tango is full of awkward situations like that, where we have to step up and learn to say no when it's important to us, right? And only we can be the judge of that. But on the side of the female leaders, right, and the criticism that is rising up around female leaders, and perhaps the lack of technique or lack of navigation skills or lack of any sort of traditional tango energy that is associated with leading. There's been sort of this opinion that women leaders are not measuring up in some way to the male leaders. And that criticism, I think, is an opportunity for us female leaders to go to the next level of our growth. Because now that we have the numbers and we are making an impact in the community, we can take the overall feedback that we're getting and our personal experiences and use it as fuel to go to the next level. And this is where I hope this episode gives you some ideas of how to take the criticism that you might be getting, that you might be facing, and the emotional tension and the anger that you might be experiencing in response to that criticism, and how to channel that and focus that in the direction of more of what you actually are after, which is great dancing, great connection, going to milongas, being a musical, amazing, talented, virtuosic leader that you are capable of. Like, that's what we all want for ourselves. I think we want to be as excellent in our tango as we possibly can. So to that end, my suggestions in this episode are really going to be focused towards that end result for all of us. Now, for a long time, I myself had the doubt that women ultimately can measure up to male leaders, female leaders dancing to the same level and being appreciated to the same extent as male leaders. But in my own recent experience, I kind of lost a lot of that doubt because, as many of you heard, I participated at the SoCal Tango Championship a few months ago, and I competed in the Jack and Jill category as a leader. Now, this category is resembles most closely the social dance floor style of dancing, and the category is judged based on the ability of partners to adapt to new partners, right? So you don't dance with the same person twice. You always rotate, and there's a lot of focus on the dancer's ability to adapt to the other person and stay within the music and connection and provide that experience of harmony. So I competed as a leader, and I placed third in that category, which is, I believe, the first time in the history of this event. I know that pretty certainly. And I have not heard of other women placing in championships in the States or, abroad. I have not heard. If you know of any, I would love to know who they are. But it was a big deal symbolically to place in a competition as a leader, because it sort of validated my attempt, my goal to embody the tango leading role as fully as possible, even though I was a woman, because I very much felt that I was inferior to male leaders for a long time. To have a recognition in this formal setting from a panel of judges who are judging these skills that I've been honing as a leader, and to receive their sort of appreciation of my skill in that role was huge for me personally, but I think symbolically it put to rest this question of whether a female leader can measure up and can be judged in the same category, on the same level as male leaders. So if I can do it, I mean, this is cliche, I know, but it really is true. If I could do that, anybody, any woman can do that, because I did not have any pre-existing advantages that would make me more likely to do so well. And I did not actually do a lot of training. A lot of people afterwards were asking me, like, you must have worked so hard. What did you do? Because the year before, as I mentioned before, I did not place. So in the span of 1 year, something did change in my dance, but it had nothing to do with me trying to place in a competition, but it had everything to do with me really working on my leading in a way that made sense to me, and what I figured made most impact in the community. And, I really think one of the attitudes that made my experience at the championship really profound was that I had a lot of humility about being there, because I definitely feel I don't have the skill set and the technical virtuosity of a lot of the leaders there. But I know what it's like to be a follower. I know exactly how that feels. So my edge, my advantage that I could offer is that when I was leading, I really made it about the follower. And I just thought, if I just can make the follower look good, and I don't rush them and I don't force them into anything more than they're capable of at this moment, being as nervous as they are, like, that's it. That's all I can do. Like, I have nothing else to offer. That was my attitude. I'm not saying that that's the truth. I'm just saying that was the lens through which I was looking at my role as a leader. And I think that is a big aspect to what contributed to me doing so well, is that ability to tune in and be present in a way that perhaps male leaders don't really know, because they don't follow. So that's just one of the advantages I think that female leaders can trust in and remember. When you're feeling sort of inferior and you don't have that confidence, just remember just the fact that you were a follower first and you know what that's like. That gives you a level of understanding and communication that is unique. So now that we've established that there's a lot of female leaders now, our masses are swelling and it's starting to ruffle some feathers and people are complaining. And we've also established that there's not really a limit to where you can take your leading as a woman just because you're a woman. Your leading skills can be, and a lot of times are, as good, if not better, than a lot of the male leaders. This is feedback I've gotten from multiple followers, as well as other leaders, other female leaders who heard it from their partners, their followers. So there's a lot of resources and a lot of support and a lot of now experience for us to build on. And I want to suggest a few ways that you can now channel your anger, perhaps your zeal, your excitement about developing your lead. The first thing that I would talk about is definitely navigation. Now, one of the criticisms has been that female leaders, a lot of time, the navigation is not as good as male leaders. I don't really think that's the case. There are plenty of male leaders who fall very short of the minimal navigation skills that are required. And a lot of times you could just spot them by looking in the middle of the dance floor. But it's true that when first female leaders begin to go to a milonga and they start to have that challenge of being around other people and dancing around others, it's tough. It's tough for anyone, whether you're a woman or a man. For me, the way I develop my navigation skills and continue to is just making sure that when I'm walking in the line of dance, my primary focus is on the walking in the line of dance. That whatever it is I'm doing, I'm always looking to come back in the direction of walking in the line of dance. And it's a very physical thing that you train, but it's definitely possible to make it a stronger and stronger reflex where you're not having to think so much about it. Your body's just doing it, but it's kind of like you have like an inner compass that magnetically is drawn in the direction of the line of dance. So if you're new to leading as a woman and you're nervous about going to a milonga and bumping into someone, first of all, go when it's not crowded. Go to a practica where it's more relaxed. But once you're there, once you're in that state, you're dancing at your first milonga and it's super crowded and you're like stuck in this conundrum of like what to do and how to not bump into people, just have your eyes set on where you're going. And anytime you turn away from that direction, you clock it in your mind and you come back to where you're going. And I know right now, perhaps when you're listening to me, you're like, oh, that's so easy. Of course, it's just look where you're going. But you'll notice that when we lead, a lot of times we want to look down. And the looking down is going to be part of it. We're always going to want to look down. That's just how it is. But as a leader, you now have to weave in those moments where you're like, okay, which direction am I heading? Which direction is this vehicle that is me and my partner actually going? And building that awareness will automatically make your navigation skills better. Just practicing the awareness on the dance floor as you're doing it. The other thing that I would say made the biggest impact on me and my leading and how I come across to other dancers and other leaders is really postural. How do I carry my posture and my embrace? When we are following, the main mechanics that the follower executes are all about this sort of organic articulation of the spine and spiraling and pivoting and creating very flowy organic movement. And most of the time, new female leaders will continue dancing like that. When they're leading, they'll end up having a lot of articulation or movement around the shoulders and arms. Their head might be forward. And that basically kind of looks like you're a beginner. It doesn't look correct. It doesn't look like it's supposed to. So I realized actually after my performance at the SoCal Championship the previous year, when I looked at my videos, I started seeing how even at that time, after leading for many years, I could see the difference between me and other leaders was that there's a lot of movement around my upper body, and it ends up looking kind of muddy and it does not have the same grace. So to lead, the way I've interpreted leading, and this is kind of like one of the biggest secrets I think that I came across that really changed how I perceived the act of leading, is when my friend said, it doesn't matter who's leading and following, whether the man is following and the woman's leading or vice versa. What matters is that there's a relationship of opposites, like yin and yang. You have to have the masculine and you have to have the feminine. You have to have the dark. You have to have the light. Like you have to have the duality represented. And so if the follower role is this feminine quality of organic movement and it's very swirly and flowy, then the opposite energy of leading is stillness, right? It's this grounded quality. And just that image for me was a turning point in how I approached my leading. I realized that leading was not about figures and doing figures walking forward or getting the follower to do things. It's more about embodying a principle, embodying that grounded quality around which the follower can move. And the more I can emulate, the easier it is for my partner to do the natural thing for them to do, which is to be organic and articulate in all these beautiful ways. But there has to be that decision mentally, and then it has to carry out through the posture. And that's where the disconnect a lot of times is you might listen to my words and agree with me and say, yes, that's exactly what I think it should be. But are you actually doing it? Are you moving in that way? And most of the time for dancers, there's an kind of a blind spot there, because unless we see ourselves, we don't know for sure. And that's why I keep talking about making videos. When you see yourself dancing as a leader, and ask yourself, do you actually see yourself emulate those qualities of leading that you would want to see in a leader yourself, the qualities that attract you in a leader? Then, you'll know how far or how close you are to emulating that. But it's not, unless you do that, it's very much kind of like you're thinking, you're guessing. One of my recommendations that I also give a lot to new female leaders is to watch other leaders that you want to dance like. And that might be kind of a foreign idea at this point, but I think it's important to be inspired in your leading by someone who really embodies the qualities that you want to embody. So for me, the way I dance is very much based on the leaders that I've been watching, both professional leaders, but also leaders in my community. When I go to a milonga, there's a number of dancers that I really admire, and I just watch them and I imagine what it's like to dance with them, or I watch how they move, or I pay attention to their pelvis. And as a new leader, when you're developing your style, you want to learn how to move and look elegant, and you want to look attractive. I mean, yes, it's fine to do a bunch of figures and be able to do innovative vocabulary, but to me, I want to look cool. It's very simple, because when you look cool, other people want to dance with you. That's what I realized. And looking cool is more, I don't know if it's more or less, but it's different from sort of showing off figures. My avatar is Clark Gable, probably because my mom was obsessed with Gone with the Wind when I was a child. So for me, when I imagine myself leading and the kind of energy that I want to embody, and how cool do I want to look, to me, my avatar is someone like Clark Gable, or George Clooney, or Brad Pitt. There's a slew of men that I think to myself, wow, if I were a guy, I'd want to be that. And maybe that's kind of a weird thought, because I'm not suggesting definitely that when you're leading, you become a man. That's kind of a very simplistic way of interpreting this idea, because if you think of yin and yang, the yin has a little bit of yang in it. If you look at the symbol, the black and the white halves, in the black circle and the black half, there's a white circle, and vice versa on the other side. So I think when we as women lead, when we step into that leading role, we're stepping in to that masculine part of ourselves, which is part of us. It needs a voice. It deserves expression, and we get to play with that. Doesn't mean that we're becoming men. It just means that we're tapping into that masculine, grounded part of ourselves. And the same for men. When I see a man follow, I'm not going to say, oh, he's moving like a woman. They're moving like themselves, but there's a feminine quality to their expression that is beautiful in its own way. So playing with this notion of that you are embodying certain qualities, certain masculine principles that make you who you are, that give character to your lead, give character to your posture, to how you carry yourself, whether it's the choice to stand up straight, to not cross your arms in front of you. You know, those are all things like when I was in the championship at the competitions, one thing I had to like keep reminding myself is not to fiddle with my hands and not to clench my hands, because when I get nervous, you know, it just starts to kind of like show through the body. But to just, you know, be chill, like don't be nervous, and all of that is a practice, right? All of those pieces are part of the journey. Now, the other thing that we all have to work out is the cabeceo. There are women who like dancing with women. There are women who don't like dancing with women. There are women who like dancing with women but don't know when a woman is cabeceoing them. And there are women who don't know that they like dancing with women. So we're in uncharted territory. And I think that because we're women, it's actually very easy for us to find a common ground and understand each other. I would say, in terms of communicating your desires to other women, it's really important to be clear. So if you want to dance with someone, you want to cabeceo them, learn to go after that, but also be respectful and be open to them saying no, and perhaps even say something to the effect of, you know, maybe off the dance floor, like, hey, I would love to dance with you just in case you are open to dancing with women. I would love to cabeceo you. But just to add that extra layer of communication, I think is a valuable growth tool. I think eventually we'll figure out how to do this and how to understand each other more easily. But for now, it is something that needs to be negotiated, I think, more in the moment and more verbally. Don't just, and I have to say this to myself, don't just expect that women are going to be okay dancing with me. Because I do that. I just kind of expect that everyone wants to dance with me. And, you know, this post that I just recently saw alerted me to the fact that, hey, you know what? That's actually not true. Maybe some women dance with you because they just feel pressured. And there was a woman in the comments who ended up saying that, yeah, when she goes to the milonga, she never wants to dance with women. She only wants to dance with men. And I suddenly thought, oh, I can stop feeling guilty that I've never tried to cabeceo her. Because I've seen her at the milonga, and I've sort of been feeling like, why don't I cabeceo her at all? Like, she's right there. She's probably going to say yes. And what is it that I feel that's not like welcoming? But then I was like, oh, now I get it. Like, she actually is very clear that she doesn't want to dance with me. And that makes it so much easier for me and frees up my mind. Okay, so these are 3 very specific areas for us leaders, female leaders specifically, to focus on: the posture, navigation skills, and cabeceo. Now, I want to leave you with a couple of action steps that you can also do today that would possibly be very helpful. Number 1, share this episode with another female leader who might need a little pick me up, a little cheer me up, because I do want this episode to encourage all women, regardless of your level, to feel empowered and better about their skill set. So share this with others, share it on your social media, send it to your friends. And then secondly, if you want to be part of a community of female tango leaders, and you want to have that extra little bit of support from other women, I do have a community that I've been hosting for a few years, Chicas del Tango. You've probably heard about it. It's my community of women. We have a practica once a month here in LA, but I do have a Facebook group just for those women where on a weekly basis I post different things for us to work on and musicality concepts and new vocabulary. So if you want a little bit of that support and inspiration from other female leaders, do check out that group. It's only open to women. I'm sorry, gentlemen. Hopefully you will find a different group for just you if you need it. But if you are a woman learning to lead tango, and you want to connect with other women, you want to be a part of this community, check out the link in the show notes. We'll continue the banter next week. Until then, ciao.